I was vegetarian for about 8 years, and that was because I had a bunny rabbit called Fluffy. I suppose that really opened my mind to like all animals kind of having personalities, and even like small bunnies that you kind of underestimate. Like, she just became so important to me. Like, I do think that being vegan requires effort, and I actually like that. Self-care and self-love is part of like loving other people and being loving in the planet, I think.
To watch or listen to the full interview, please head to viva.org.uk/podcast.
Hi, Kate. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, you're welcome.
No problem. So could you just tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do for our viewers and listeners?
Yeah, so I'm Kate Nash. I'm a musician, I'm a songwriter, and an actor. And I started, I suppose, in like 2006, released my first record, Made of Bricks, which was like a #1 record in the UK, which started me sort of on a like global touring campaign. And then I became an independent artist in 2012. I was on a Netflix series called Glow, The Gorgeous Ladies of Wrestling. I'm releasing my 5th album with Kill Rock Stars, who I just signed to last year. It just came out this year, so.
Fabulous. Now, for our viewers out there, obviously, everyone's kind of interested in your vegan journey. So can you tell us a little bit about how that came to be and what was the kind of inspiration for that and catalyst?
Yeah, so I was vegetarian for about 8 years. And that was because I had a bunny rabbit called Fluffy, who just sort of, it was actually connected to my OCD at first and anxiety issues that I was having, that I sort of was in this like magical thinking thing where I made a deal with the universe that was like, you know, if I do this, then this won't happen. If I don't do this, then this will happen. And I was going through that with Fluffy, the bunny, because she just sort of became so important to me. I really underestimated what a bunny rabbit would be like as a pet. And she was just really amazing. And I suppose that really opened my mind to like all animals kind of having personalities, and even like small bunnies that you kind of underestimate. Like, she just became so important to me. And she had to have this surgery, and there was a risk to her life just because she was so small. And I just started like having to do all these things, because if I didn't, she wouldn't be okay in the surgery. And then this one day I woke up and I just was like, if I don't eat any animals, then she'll be okay. And it was like tied to OCD and anxiety, but that started me off as a vegetarian. And then I remember the day like that I sort of like, because I craved meat at first, and then I remember I walked into like catering at a festival, and there was all this meat, and it was the first time I really saw meat as like a dead body. And I was like, ugh. I was like, that's really disgusting, and it's dead meat, and that's so weird. And that was the first time I really thought like, oh, I don't want to eat that, you know? And then I sort of was vegetarian for a long time, and then it was Okja, the movie Okja, that I watched, that I'd sort of avoided a lot of the documentaries and sort of more in-depth thinking on like the cruelty within a lot of the massive, you know, farming industries. And then I watched that movie, and I was in a bit of a vulnerable place. I guess I'd just gone through a breakup. I was with my dog, and that final scene in Okja. And I think because if people don't know, Okja's a movie with like this super pig that's created to like sell meat, you know, in a really mass way. And it's a funny movie. It's like an action movie. And the pig is not a real pig. It's like a CGI kind of created like type of pig that's been bred on purpose to make more meat. And it's about this little Korean girl that her pig, she didn't know it was involved in this kind of breeding competition, and she's like best friends with the pig. And so when it gets taken to go to New York to go to the competition, she like goes on a rescue mission, and you kind of follow these sort of like mad vegans. Like there's one guy that's so vegan he doesn't eat anything, so he's always just like passing out because like there's problems, you know, with every part of the food industry, really, like almonds and just the water that's you know, and you can get into such detail about like how everything basically is bad that we do as humans. So
it's quite depressing, isn't
he's
it?
always like, it can be quite overwhelming, I think. But the final scene with the mum and the little tiny pig she like sends out, and they're all in this like massive farm. And I think because they are CGI, your brain is like, oh, it's not real. But then your other brain is like, it is real. Like the other side of you is like, oh, that does really happen. And it kind of convinces you more because they're like CGI. And yeah, it just really struck me. And I think after that, I just was like, oh, I get it, you know. I sort of get like how for me, like being vegan is, I wanted to like not participate in the mass like destruction that we like the mass consumption. Like my mum actually grew up on a farm, so like I have got like farming like roots, and I think that there's two ways that I sort of look at not wanting to participate. There's like, I don't want to kill and hurt animals. I actually understand that there's ways that humans can like use the earth, and some vegans might disagree with me here, but like, you know, when you think about what we come from as like killing an animal and hunting an animal, it was difficult to do, and it took people a long time, and it would be like the animal was sacred because they respected so much like what it provided to survival, and then most of the time you're eating like non-animal products because it's so difficult to do that. And I think like we now live in this like insane world where we're so far away from that process and connection to like anything being sacred, that we're just actually causing so much destruction and being so cruel. And there's the side of me that's like, oh, I just don't want to kill an animal because I just love animals. And then there's the side of me that's like, I also think we need to be more conscious as a human race and like respect the earth. And like, I don't need, you know, like, you know how there's some vegans that some vegans will eat honey and some won't. And I think like honey's a great example of like, actually, if you lived somewhere where someone had bees in it, you ate the honey and it was like good seasonally for people's allergies and stuff. Like that's a kind of natural human connection to like animals. But then you go to the supermarket and there's like 50,000 types of honey, and like I lived in America for 10 years, and it's like the plastic and the sort of mass production, and you're like, is this good for the bees? Like you know, how many bottles and types of honey do we need? And I feel that when I see shampoo, I'm like, how many types of shampoo do we really need? Like there's just such like mass destruction. And anyway, it was Okja that really kind of made me feel that and made me think, I don't like, what I like about being vegan is it's a very easy way to do something good and to step out of politically saying like, I don't think that where we've got to is okay. Like, I don't think that it's right the way that farming practices are. I think it's so unethical, so cruel. It's not even food. And I think that for me, it was like wanting to just pull the plug on being involved in that at all, because I can't always guarantee if I ate animal products that like I'm not participating in cruelty, because I don't live on a farm or near a farm or near a friend that has chickens and is giving me, you know, like I know there's various ways that people look at veganism and people have different opinions. But for me, that's like what I just don't want to, like I travel, I live in a city, I don't want to harm animals, so I don't want to be involved.
No, it all makes complete sense. It's really difficult because when you start to unpick it, it's like the whole nature thing's symbiotic, right? So it's like, you know, like you were saying, they might kill an animal and it would feed people in the olden days. And then for 9 months or 10 months of the year, they'd eat vegetables or whatever that was seasonal and could be grown. But we've mass produced everything. You know, carrots aren't even orange, they're purple. It was something to do with you know, the Protestants and things, and everything's just become so saturated and mass produced, and capitalism has just got to the point now where they've got food banks in supermarkets, but then they throw away food at the end of the day, and you're like, what is going on? It makes no sense. And it is about doing
it's kind of
like yeah, like what you feel comfortable and able to do, right? But if you've removed yourself from, as a vegan, from eating animal products and dairy products and things, it's a bit of control for you as well. It's something that you can do. And it's like,
and I think sorry, it makes me think of like, I know that like there's a lot of positivity around like, there's so many like vegan products for people now, but I think that actually the vegan community needs to become kind of a little bit critical of that and a little bit wary of like, first of all, mass produced food isn't good for us. Like, if you don't learn to like cook from scratch, it's likely these overly processed foods are going to cause like illnesses in people. And apparently now we're eating like 80% of our diet is like processed food. So I feel like I'm now entering like a new phase. I've been vegan since 2017. I don't think actually that like, I don't say like, oh, I'm vegan and like that's the healthiest diet in the world. I don't actually think it is. Like, really, you probably need like fish. You probably need some fish oil. You probably need certain things. But if you learn to cook and you like really think about the food that you're consuming and you take supplements and you look after yourself, like I do think that being vegan requires effort. And I actually like that because it's made me care about myself more as well. It's made me think about my long-term health. It's made me like make so much effort. I cook, or like, I mean, I tour, so I often have to eat out. But when I'm home, I cook all my meals. Like, I love to cook. I love to think about like, oh, what have I been eating? Like, let me mix it up and like make sure I'm getting all the right nutrients. And like, I think we need to become a little bit more critical of like overly processed foods, because that's again another sort of mass-produced thing that it feels like capitalism is just taking advantage of people being vegan and be like, okay, we'll just give them all this crap. And it's like, what are we putting in our bodies? Because we care about the planet, we care about animals, and we also should care about ourselves, because that's like, I think part of the process of like living like a sort of ethical, kind, healthy life is making sure you're looking after your gut, making sure you're looking after your mind, and like how we treat ourselves often ends up affecting how we treat others, right? So yeah, for me, it's like I try to think about it in a really wide way, and like I know my reasons and I know why I do it, and I know the vegan community has lots of like infighting as well, but like I think we should think about the whole like farming industry, the whole capitalist industry, the whole food market, and like what these companies care about, what they don't care about in history, what they haven't cared about, and what that's led to. And it's sort of like, yeah, I think like wanting to put a focus on health is where I'm at with like the vegan lifestyle, because it's very easy to be vegan but like be really unhealthy and not like have longevity in your life, and that's our health is also important to me. Do you know what I mean? Like, it feels like it's like self-care and self-love is part of like loving other people and being loving in the planet.
I completely agree. I mean, when you start to kind of, if you know, like you say, go vegan for the animals, and then suddenly you start to understand like the supply chain of farms and what happens, and and you start, it's like you awaken to so many different aspects, you know, and it does affect your health, it does affect the planet, you know, and it's all related. It's all the same thing. And I think we've just gone too far, you know, and we have.
Like, surely there's going to be some kind of implosion, because it feels like I don't know, like we're pushing capitalism to the max at the moment, and it's happening with our phones and our relationship with these apps, and like we've even commodified our personalities now, you know, like you're supposed to sell who you are to be able to, like, they've tricked us into thinking we're playing like a little, it's a game that like connects you with your family and friends. No, it isn't. It makes billionaires really rich, and you're being asked to like constantly self-brand and like sell your personality. That's the lowest of the low. And so I just think like caring about ourselves is part of how we evolve. I think like if we don't start to put like boundaries in of like, no, I'm not just gonna sell myself constantly so that Mark Zuckerberg like keeps getting rich and can buy even more land in Hawaii, like which is destructive to Hawaii. And I'm not going to like fall for the same like marketing ploys that, you know, have happened in the meat industry with like the vegan meat industry. Like, let's think further down the line of like ethics and health and like what we're participating in when it comes to capitalism. And I don't know, I've always felt that having boundaries, personal boundaries with ethics is really important, and knowing what yours are. I tend to like set mine, and I'm like, I don't go past that line, because if I do, it just becomes too easy to like slip down the hill, you know? So for me, I like to have boundaries, because then I know like where I stand and you cannot be perfect,
No,
by the way.
of course
also,
not.
you cannot be perfect. And I don't like the vegan culture of like, you know, pressuring people to be like perfect. I really don't like that, because I think people making efforts is so valuable to the health of the planet, and also just takes like, you know, it took me a long time to stop eating meat. It took me a long time to, even then when I stopped eating meat, realize, oh, I don't want to do that. You know, like I craved it for so long. I wanted to watch other people eat meat, because I was like, oh, I'm like jealous. I want to eat meat. I can't imagine being like that now.
It's a journey, isn't it? And everyone has a different approach to it, and it takes time.
Everyone has a different approach. Everyone has different needs, and like we have to listen to our bodies. And like, I think like knowing why you're doing something is important. I don't know. Yeah.
No, it makes total sense. I was going to ask you about that, because it's really interesting when you're talking about boundaries, and I get it. It's like a sense of who you are and what you stand for, isn't it, as well, and what you'll take. But obviously working in the music industry and from quite young, was it extra important for you, would you say, that you had that kind of grounding?
Yeah, definitely in the music industry, because again, another sort of shady business. Yeah. And I feel like your morals do get tested in the entertainment industry in certain ways. And you have to learn like what you're willing to compromise and what you're not willing to compromise. So I feel like I do have good practice at that because of my work. Yeah.
No, that's a good thing. I mean, I was reading a long time ago, you started with a zine, didn't you, called Ignorant Youth? About being a feminist, for example. Yeah, within the music industry. So it sounds like even quite early on in your career that you kind of, you know, you weren't going to necessarily be taken advantage of, or you knew where you were going to be.
Yeah. I think I just come from like DIY culture. I was really inspired by like punks and like DIY culture and like Riot Girl zines, and I have two sisters, and like I come from an opinionated family, and I feel like my mum was a nurse as well. So her work was very much about like caring for people and respect for people, and ethics in her job were so important in nursing. So I feel like that was instilled in us from a young age, and like also we were taught things like sort of how to stand up for other people, and like how to say things when other people don't say things, and like, you know, even if it's especially about death, to be honest. My mum's a nurse, so she's like, if somebody loses somebody, if somebody dies, just say something. It doesn't matter what you say. Like, they won't remember what you say, they'll just remember that you were supportive. So you can even just say, I don't know what to say, but I just wanted to send love, or, you know. So I feel like we were kind of instilled these like ethics and like this outspokenness from a young age.
Oh, that makes sense. And I mean, when you've got a platform as well, like yours, when you're famous as well, you do have more people listening, which is, you know, it's sad but true, isn't it? So, I mean, I know in some of your music as well, like 2019's Trash, you were talking about plastic pollution and things like that, but do you feel that kind of responsibility to bring those kind of issues to light?
I think like, is it responsibility, or I guess there's like always been some responsibility. I think like I feel really aware of my privilege and having a platform. Like I remember like being on stage and just being like, oh wow, I have a place, I have a voice, I have loads of young vulnerable people in front of me, and like that voice means something to people. And I sort of became aware of that quite early on, and it's quite intense. At first I didn't really know what to do with it, and making the zine was actually like part of coping with that, because I was like, I don't know what to say on these big stages, but let me like make a zine, and then I can share my voice, but also I'll ask my friends to contribute and have like more voices involved. And it's sort of this community has always been really important to me, something I'm really drawn to. And yeah, like, yeah, people, I think now there's more pressure than ever because everything's so overly documented. And I don't like that. I don't like when people ask people to be perfect. I think it's really terrible, like messaging for young people to say you have to kind of present yourself all the time really perfectly and never mess up, otherwise you might be cancelled. It's kind of like, how is that living? Like the human experience is about failure and about learning and growth and having the right to kind of like, I don't know, just experience life, right? Like I didn't do anything perfectly. I'm not a perfect person now. I never will be. That's not my goal. And I think that like if we ask people to be that, we're just not like, that's like, we've got to manage our expectations about like what humans actually are and what humans like. I don't know.
It makes total sense. I was just thinking it's really weird because we're like holding people to an incredibly high standard, and then at the same time it feels like the world is in the biggest crisis and mess that it's been in for a long time. You know, we've got violence and
yeah. Well, there's a lot of though. Yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of people constantly expressing how they feel online, and I think that's been quite negative for the world. I really dislike comments. I feel quite wary of myself commenting on things now online because I like commenting on things in real life and I love conversation, but I think comments kind of kill conversation. And I think comments, like people basically act in very adolescent ways online. Like grown adults talk like teenagers and it's not really cool. And it's not really like, I don't know. I'm just kind of confused sometimes when I see adults behaving in ways online. I'm like, why did you regress to being a teenager? And I think it's the apps, the way they're built. You kind of are encouraged to constantly act like a teenager. If you think about Instagram, it's like constantly expressing like what you're up to and like your identity. Like, isn't that what we did when we were 15, 16, 17? Wasn't that really important? That's why our bedroom walls were like covered in posters. And it was like, this is who I am. Whereas I'm 37. I shouldn't still have that constant desire to like tell people like what I think and who I am, but the app is designed to function that way. So they have basically tried to hook adults into acting like teenagers past the age of being teenagers, and I think that's quite strange and it's uncomfortable to watch.
It is, and even the like debate just doesn't happen anymore. It's just polarized opinions, and it makes a lot of people, I think a lot, especially teenagers, you know, my friends with like younger children, the kids don't really know how to respond anymore because if they say something, they're so afraid of saying anything. They just keep quiet, and it's like, ooh, it's silent, complicit, coercive control in some respects, I think.
Yeah, because even the instinct for me, like not to comment online, I have thought about that. Like, what is that? Is that good? Is that bad? And I'm like, no, well, I think I can choose like to want to participate IRL more. And for me, I get so much more out of like an argument in the van with my band about something, or a debate in the pub with like I'm not like, I have people around me that we challenge each other, but like it's thoughtful debate. It's not scary arguments. Like sometimes there's a place to argue with someone, but thoughtful debate is a safe place, and it should be a safe place to go like, I think this, or I'm going to say this thing, and someone say, well, maybe not that, but this, and you're like, no, I disagree, and then you might think about it an hour later and realize, you know what, they're actually right, like about that.
And that's the healthy adult way of doing it, isn't it? It's, you talk about it, you think on it.
I don't know how else you learn. I don't know how else you learn. Like, I really don't. Like, we're not in university, we're not in school. So if you don't do that, and if you can't have like a back and forth with somebody and disagree, but also kind of try so hard to like look at people's circumstances, lifestyles, where they're from, what they've grown up in, like how we're all kind of conditioned in so many ways. It's like, I don't know. That's where I'm at, I think, in my late 30s. I'm trying to look at how I've been conditioned by my situation, you know, everything, like from how you're brought up to school to my experiences in the music industry to like being a woman in the media to like everything. It's like we're all so conditioned to society sort of says like you have to be this, and you're like, maybe I'm not that, but like I've got to tick these things off the list because then I'll be happy. And it's like,
it doesn't
maybe life isn't about like being happy, it's about like just experiencing like the ups and downs of life. And like
I agree. I mean, I'm similar age to you, a little bit older, and it's about you kind of come to terms with a lot of the things you've done, and there's a point when you, I think similarly, like mid to late 30s, you say, hang on a minute, stop, and you take stock of things, and you're like, did I particularly like how I behaved as a person there? No, I was a narcissistic little shitbag in that instance. Or actually, I've got these lovely qualities that I was told I was too sensitive in, and actually no. Told by who? Who are the people telling me this? And you stop and you do take stock, I think. And then it's like you say, a lot of people now are like branded, walking, talking CVs, always trying to, and you're like, that doesn't give you meaning. That doesn't give you happiness. And what is it that matters to you? Because it might be totally, if some people want to be a millionaire CEO, fine. If that's what they want and they're truly happy with that, you go for that. But for a lot of people, it's about just being okay with who you are and coming to like terms with a lot of the good and bad in life and how you've dealt with it and how you're going to.
And it's all like a lot of how people present themselves is like fake anyway, you know. Really important to remember, like a lot of what you see every day is just marketing, which isn't real.
True. I mean, you lived in the States, so I mean, I don't know how for me, when I've been there, it's like it's on hyper alert there, like that's how it's kind of ingrained into things. Whereas,
I mean, I feel like actually living in LA, there's so much that you can carve out for yourself because there's such grand, like beautiful nature in America as well. So in a way you can sort of escape like and create like your own worlds in a really nice way. I just think I don't know. Like, I know what you mean, like the politics and all of it, it's kind of crazy, but I try to be conscious of how much I need to participate and how much I want to expose myself to. How often do I need to read or listen to the news, really? How often should I be on my apps? You know, it shouldn't be every day for me because I don't really like function well if I do that. So what's necessary and like what's going to help me do my job, what's going to help me like live my life and stay informed and have opinions, but also like be able to like move and breathe and think.
Yeah, of course. And it has to resonate, it has to be true to you. You have to be true to yourself, right? And we know fine well that the media's not. It's completely controlled. Everybody knows that. Murdoch's empire. It's a part, again, it's all the capitalist system that we're stuck in. It's just being able to, I feel like sometimes headlines should be banned and you should be made to read the entire article before you can actually have an opinion on it, because it's just clickbait, isn't it? All of it now, and it's designed for emotion.
I know, yeah. But I mean, it is a comfort, like when, like the vegan side of things can be such a comfort because it's like, well, like animals are so great and like just not doing what we're doing.
True. Then they're still,
And like, and they're just like so sweet, and even nature that's violent is not violent in the way that we're violent. You know, it's like there's so many lessons to be learned from nature. And it's nice just to think like I'm doing something to like benefit the planet, not like fuck it up even more.
Exactly. And it's true, you know, the minute you're camping or you're in nature, that's it, you reset, don't you? And it's like, it's so beneficial for us as people, and it like...
Yeah, we all feel it, even just going to sit in the garden, like, do you remember in the pandemic, like people's half an hour of exercise a day? It's like, it was so important to us, like... It was like you'd see people go out and be like, oh, I need this so badly.
It's so true. I mean, I had a tiny little balcony in London, you know, that I was preparing over the odds for. And the whole time I was like, I need to get out of London. I got to get out. And, you know, I've moved another city, but with way more countryside. And the change has just been like dramatic, but so necessary. You know, even just growing your own herbs and things, it's like you're cultivating things again for yourself. And it's so important.
That's okay. Yeah.
Just while we're on it, because you sort of mentioned, I know, I completely agree. There is a lot of infighting and things, but you starred in the vegan comedy film Coffee Wars. I mean, a lot of
Yes.
people say vegans, comedy, do they go hand in hand? But how did that kind of come about, and how were you approached for that?
Yeah, so I auditioned for the role, and I think, yeah, because I'd seen Okja, and like that to me was really funny, and I think they made fun of like veganism in a way that I think if you can laugh at something, like that's really important, because that actually turned me vegan. Do you know what I mean? Like it's sort of being able to find the humor in how ridiculous the thinking can get, because it's so easy to spiral and be like, oh my God, we're just a parasite, and we're just, or like there's nothing you can do as a human that helps anyone unless you like run away and live in the woods and just stop participating. So I knew that film can actually impact, because it impacted me. And yeah, I auditioned for the role, got the part, and it was really fun to shoot. It was like, also the coffee aspect was really interesting, because it was based off these like coffee competitions that like happen. And I think like my character being the sort of over the top, like intense, you know, like throwing people out for like asking for like normal milk and stuff, and just being that sort of character. And then at the same time, like her morals get tested, because financially she's like in such a bind, and then she has to like make a choice, and she sort of uses like real dairy in a competition so that she can have a chance to compete. So it is interesting to like think about that, like going against your morals or whatever. And but like the reality as well of like financial, like there's lots of conversations in the vegan community of like, you know, considering like the human, like the financial aspect of people's lives, and like culture, and lots of like, I think one blanket judgment is not helpful to anyone, right? And but it's like the comedy aspect. I think if you make people laugh, you can like get to people in a way.
I do.
Right? Does that make sense? Sorry, I feel like I'm not very eloquent today.
No, it makes complete sense.
But making people laugh, I think is a great way to like deliver a emotional message. Because, you know, you don't always want to watch a film that's heavy about something. You're like, oh, like I don't want to see that. I don't want to see I didn't want to watch the documentaries like for so long. I'm vegetarian, so I don't need to watch any of this. I eventually did, and I don't want to ever see it again. I don't want to watch, you know, it's horrible. And so to be able to like make an impact, have a message, but make people feel good and make them laugh. I'm not saying it's not necessary to also make people feel uncomfortable and upset. Like sometimes, like I did eventually like watch the documentaries that everybody knows about, because I was like, I feel like I should actually see it. But it's also just sometimes on a Saturday night you just want to have a laugh, and that's
exactly.
That's good.
And that's the thing, if you're laughing at something, it's like Ramesh, he's very popular for a reason, right? Because he is funny, he's quite caustic, but also then you do think about what he's saying, because your barriers are down as well. I think with somebody who's making you laugh or not taking themselves too seriously, you feel a bit more open to hearing them, because you're like, oh, I don't have to be guarded, and there's something, I don't know, psychologically or emotionally, there's more connection.
Yeah, and I think the human experience is strange, but like even when we go through, like, I think it's part of processing trauma and things that are difficult is laughter. Like I think some of the hardest times in my personal life, for example, I've had like some of the hardest laughs during those times, because it's almost like to cope with it, you have to laugh, you know, it's like the laugh or you'll cry thing. Like there's definitely a time and a place to cry, and there's also a time and a place to laugh. And sometimes you shouldn't be doing either, but you are anyway. Like that's being human.
No, it's true. I remember in a particularly difficult part, my friend Chloe just turned to me and went, worse things happen to better people. And I think my mum had just died or something. It was something like quite dramatic, and I was like, yeah, that's a really good, And you can't help but laugh, can you? Because you're like, yeah, good point.
Yes.
It's like maybe give it 10 minutes, but yeah.
And
I mean, you've been very open as well about, you know, your experiences, you know, with your manager and things like that. And we don't have to touch on them today because you've talked about them, but do you feel it's quite cathartic when you're able to just sort of share the sort of darker times and talk about them? Do you feel like it ever like loses its impact or hold on you by being able to do that?
I think I feel like I'm a bit more protective now that I'm older. I don't know if you found that. When I was young, when you're younger, you're so open with everyone. But I was. And I think like now I'm a little bit more guarded isn't the right word because I'm very open still, but I think I'm more selective about who I let in and want to share everything with. And I think what I've learned from those experiences is to, like, the reason I wanted to share so much about them is not necessarily for me, but for the industry to like, I think if you share experiences, you can highlight how much things are happening and make maybe other people feel like less alone when it's happening to them, and just show an honest example, because like, hopefully that changes the industry. I don't know if it will, but maybe it will one day. And then what I've learned from that is to trust my instincts. So I have really good instincts, and I look back on things and I feel like I have, I think sometimes you have feelings and you're like, I think this, but I don't know really why I think it. And so I used to think, well, I have no reason to think that, so it's probably fine. Whereas now I'm like, no, you knew, like we have deep knowledge in us, in our like blood and bones. And like, sometimes you just feel something and you might be like emotionally reading somebody's body language and you don't really know, you don't have to have like evidence for why you feel a certain thing. Now I'm like, if I feel something, then that, I'm probably right.
It's always that gut instinct. There's always like somebody really charming walks in, everyone loves them. And I remember at a job I had, I was like, and it was very much, oh, hi, how you doing? Would you like a coffee? But I was also like, okay, let's keep this surface and you're like, you're not coming in. Yeah, it's like an energetic thing. Yeah, I don't know what it is, but it's probably just years of experience. And
it doesn't matter, does it? It doesn't really, you don't have to. I think I've learned that I don't need to know why. Yeah. I don't even need to understand it. I just like want to trust the feeling more and more.
Yeah. No, that's good.
It's quite cool.
It's good. It is. I think it's coming to that age as well where you do kind of get your shit together a bit and you're like, okay, these are the things that I've learned now and I will trust my gut, because if it's really anxious, it's...
I'm going to stop for 1 second. I'm so sorry. I've just realised my battery's
no worries.
low and I don't want it.
That's great.
And then you lose everything.
Yeah, thank you, Kate. Great. She's just getting a
just on the other side.
That's all right. She's just having a battery. Actually, Gary, would you do me a favour? Would you grab the battery pack from here as well, because mine's running low. I'll just give it a bit of a charge.
As a power lead?
Yeah, if that's all right. It's a good shout. It's good you've done that because mine's running low as well, so I'm just going to plug this in really quick. I'll just take this one out.
Oh, yeah, but that's come on.
Phew. Good shout. Cool. Yeah, thank you as well, because mine was about to die. That's all right. So I guess we'll just sort of round up then. So, Kate, what are your kind of future plans? Have you got anything coming up over the next 12 months or?
So I just finished sort of festival season and I'm going on tour. I'm going to Hamburg first for Reed Farm Festival on September 21st, which is a great festival in Germany. And then I'm going on my US tour on October 10th. I start in Philadelphia, going across the East Coast and like to the West, basically. Not going to absolutely everywhere, but like a pretty extensive like month-long tour in the US. And then I'll be in Europe for some dates, and the UK again in November, December, and then Ireland. Wow. So I'm kind of getting around, and it's going to be a bit of a busy autumn and winter period for me.
That's quite a lot. Well, thank you. Yeah, there's a lot going on there. Well, thank you so much for chatting with me today.
Thanks for having me.
It's been an absolute pleasure. So good luck with everything, and I hope the tour goes really well.
Thank you.